I cannot actually explain to you guys how many times I've gone back and watched the new Jedi Survivor trailer and pretty much just dissected every single frame within the trailer, trying to find all the little secrets and essentially just trying to learn more about the game, because obviously right now it is all fairly vague. And today I wanted to touch on one of the characters that we do see in the trailer, talking about not only who I think he is in terms of some other stuff that we've seen throughout this trailer and the first trailer, but I've also done a little bit of research into what species this guy could actually be, as well as actually finding some links to some other Star Wars media that may actually help sort of point us in the direction of who this guy may turn out to be. So without wasting any time, let's jump right into it. If you guys are all aboard the Jedi Survivor train like myself, then be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications. There's going to be plenty of content like this on the way in the lead up to the game, not only speculation but stuff that I want to see in the game, touching on any news that we get and stuff like that. So be sure to keep your eyes peeled, because I'll be covering all of that right here on the channel. But with that being said, let's get stuck right into it. So there's a few somewhat obvious things that I wanted to essentially point out to you guys. First, I'm pretty sure all of you guys have cottoned onto this at this point, but it isn't made like super obvious, so I do want to touch on it. I think that this character that we see just very briefly in the trailer, he's literally on screen for about 1 second. I do think this is the same character who is in the Bacta tank, not only at the start of this trailer, but we obviously see that same guy in the Bacta tank in the teaser trailer. And I'm going to kind of explain why I think that is the case. Now, one, obviously he has the same hair, sort of long grey hair. He also has very grey, sort of pale skin. And then on top of that, obviously the guy in the Bacta tank is missing his right arm. And in this shot that we see, I know it's a very hard angle to actually tell, but to me personally, that does look as though he is missing his right arm there. There's not very much there. Either that or the man needs to hit the gym, because he's got a tiny little arm there. But I think all three of those things very much point towards the fact that this is potentially, and in my opinion most likely, the guy in the Bacta tank. So like I said, I know most of you guys have cottoned onto that already, but for those who maybe hadn't put that together because it isn't made super obvious, I think that is who we are looking at. Now that also implies that this same guy is the guy in the first trailer who has the red lightsaber. When that trailer came out, we pretty much were all speculating that the guy in the Bacta tank is the same guy with the red saber. Again, essentially just because he only has one arm. And how many people are there going to be in this game with one arm? Let's be honest. So I think this guy that we're looking at is the guy in the Bacta tank, and therefore is most likely the guy with the red saber as well. Something else that I wanted to point out is that he is wearing these gold robes, and we do see the guy in the dark hood in that first trailer. He has got some sort of gold robes on there as well. It is very hard to tell in this shot because obviously it's very dark, but you can kind of see a glint of like gold on his robes there. So we can hardly confirm it, but I do think that all three of these characters, I guess you'd call them, I think it is all just the same character. Now, speaking of that gold robe, and this is something that I've seen a lot on Twitter and in other creators' videos, the gold robe is very reminiscent of the High Republic. So there's been a lot of speculation, could this guy actually be from the High Republic era? For those who don't know much about the High Republic, it is set, I think, a few hundred years before the Phantom Menace. I believe it's 200. And although the High Republic seems to have gotten a bad rap from essentially people who haven't actually read it, I have read every single High Republic era novel, and honestly they are some of my favorite Star Wars books. I really like this era, and so I would personally love if this guy is actually from the High Republic. Now, it sounds a little bit dumb, why would this guy be from like 200 years ago? But again, if it is the guy in the Bacta tank, we have no idea how long he's potentially been in that Bacta tank for, so it is definitely a possibility. And like I said, the golden robes are just something that are very reminiscent of that High Republic era. It's something that in all of the concept art and everything, that is kind of like the theme of the Jedi Order back then. Obviously the Jedi Order that we see in the prequels, they all kind of just wear like the sort of cream and brown robes, but back in the High Republic era, their outfits are a lot more like gold and almost a bit more fancy, I guess you would say. So again, that does not confirm anything, but it is something that's worth noting, because this guy does seem to have been in that Bacta tank for a long time. It's not like he's just been in there for a week or something, so there is every chance he's been essentially like frozen in that Bacta tank for potentially hundreds of years. On top of that, he also mentions the order at the start of the trailer. He doesn't say what order, but we're all going to assume that that is the Jedi Order. How many other orders are there in Star Wars, especially when we're talking about a game called Jedi Survivor? And so I'm going to assume he's talking about the Jedi Order there. Again, just slightly hinting at the fact that maybe this guy is a former Jedi, which is definitely a very interesting thought. Now, like I said at the start of the video, I have done a little bit of research into what species this guy could potentially be. I know he looks very much like a human, but the grey skin kind of gives it away that he is most likely some sort of alien species. And after looking into it for a little while, I've found out that there is another species within Star Wars who have very similar traits to how this guy looks, which is the Akani species. Now, this is a humanoid species with grey skin, white or grey hair. The only difference I've found there is that they do tend to have silver eyes, and obviously at the very start of this trailer, we see that this guy's eyes are light blue, again, assuming this is the guy in the Bacta tank. Now, the Akani were a warrior species, and they are mostly found in Legends. They were in some very, very important parts of Legends, but they are also mentioned in canon, and I'll get to that in a minute because that is actually, funnily enough, a big link to what I was talking about earlier. Now, within the Legends side of things, they've been in some very notable Legends content, most notably KOTOR 1 and 2, and then they've also been in 2 of the Darth Bane trilogy novels, those being Rule of Two and Dynasty of Evil, and they have also been in the Darth Plagueis novel. So Plagueis, Darth Bane, KOTOR, those are like 3 of the biggest of all time Legends like pieces of content in Star Wars. There's not a whole lot of characters, and they're not really the most important characters in those stories or anything like that, but they have definitely shown up before. Now, touching on the canon side of things, this is where it does start to get a little bit interesting, because where they've shown up in canon is, you guessed it, during the High Republic era. So this is the only place that they've actually shown up in canon Star Wars. I think it was during the Rising Storm. It may have been Light of the Jedi, but I think it was the Rising Storm. There is a moment in the book where there's a fair going on, and the Supreme Chancellor Lena So, who was essentially the Chancellor of Coruscant during that time period, she had these big like cat sort of things essentially as like bodyguards to her, and she brought them around everywhere with her. And there was actually an Akani character in that novel who essentially nearly got taken out by her cats for sort of doing something wrong. I can't remember what it was in the book. And then Stellan Gios, who is one of the main Jedi within the High Republic era, he actually kind of saved that guy's life. So that character there is obviously not going to be related or anything to this character. It's a very, very minor link, but the fact that the only canon place we've seen Akani is in the High Republic, that is just a weird little coincidence that I thought was definitely worth mentioning. Now, obviously, it's not at all confirmed that this is an Akani. This is just my guess. I have no confirmation of that or anything like that, so I could be completely wrong on that. We will just have to wait and see, but if I had to guess, that is the species that I think this guy could turn out to be. Either that, or obviously just a brand new species. They could just easily do that, or it could be as simple as his skin is grey because he's been in a Bacta tank for like 200 years or something like that. So he could literally just be a human. I'm not too sure, and I'm sure we will find out once the game actually drops. But it is always fun to do a little bit of research and sort of speculate on little intricate details like that. Overall though, I do think this guy is going to be a very important character within Jedi Survivor, and that's obviously why I've made the video today. I don't think he's just going to be some little random character. I do think he'll be, if not the actual main villain in the game, he may potentially just be similar to what Malicos was, where Malicos wasn't the main villain. You'd probably say Trilla would be the main villain in that game, but Malicos did turn out to be a pretty important character in that game, and he was a character that we didn't know of before, and in a lot of ways didn't have that much to do with like the main story of the game in terms of like the Empire hunting down Cal or anything. And I think this guy is going to be pretty similar, where we obviously know that that Imperial Senator in the first trailer, as well as no doubt Inquisitors and stuff, they are going to be hunting down Cal, so there's definitely going to be like an Imperial villain in there, whether that is Inquisitors, whether that is potentially even Vader. We know the Empire is definitely going to be involved, but I do think this guy will be almost like a secondary villain who has his own agenda and own reasons why he wants to hunt Cal down. So I'm very keen to hear what you guys think of all of the stuff that I've talked about in this video. If you have any of your own speculations and ideas, definitely let me know down in the comments as well. Leading into games like this, it is always so much fun to speculate, and like I said, there's going to be plenty more content on the channel like this. I'm not only going to do speculation stuff, but I am going to continue to break down the trailer even further, and obviously if we get more trailers, I'll break those down as well, talking about all the different like enemy types and all those sorts of things. I'll be covering any news that we get, and also just talking about things that I do or don't want to see. So like I said earlier, if you guys are very excited for Survivor like I am, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications, because there is going to be plenty of Jedi Survivor content right here on the channel. Thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and may the Force be with you always.